Hey guys, today I am building an enclosure for that DIY tube amp kit that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to build an enclosure that matched that guitar cabinet that I built a little over a month ago. If you guys caught that video, you know that I was able to build a 1x12 speaker cabinet out of a pine box that I found that was pre-cut that already had these awesome finger joints in it. The problem is I couldn't find another pine box that was the correct size for this amp enclosure. So if I wanted it to match, I had to figure out how to do these beautiful finger joints myself. The problem is every YouTube video ever on how to make finger joints or box joints shows how to do it either using a table saw or a router table with a special jig, and neither of which I have, especially being on the road full-time in an RV with my family. So I had to figure out how to do it with basic hand tools, okay? The only special tool required will be a router. This is a cheap little $30 router that you can get at Harbor Freight. Obviously, this doesn't just apply to building amps and speaker cabs. You can use this for just about any furniture building ever. So if you want to see how I made these beautiful, perfect finger joints, stick around. I'm Dan, this is Guns of Guitars. Let's get started. Now, unfortunately for you guys, it is way too beautiful out here to be wearing a normal t-shirt. So you're gonna have to look at my dad tan lines. Oh yeah! Okay, for this project, I started off with a 6-foot common pine board that I got at Home Depot for about 13 bucks. And to make my router jig, I got 2 of these 3/4 inch by 3-foot hardwood squares that I also got from Home Depot for about $2 each. I measured these into 6-inch pieces because I knew I would need 12 of these to span the entire width of the board I'm routing. Then I cut them off real quick with my jigsaw and glued them together staggered by about 1.5 inches or so. The measurements of the stagger really aren't that important as long as it's longer than the depth of the board that you are routing. And in this case, my board is only 3/4 inch, so I guesstimated about 1.5 inches. Once they were glued together, I clamped it down and made sure that the boards were laying as flat as possible. And then, for a nice smooth routing surface, I went ahead and sanded the top of it. Lastly, for the jig, I installed these small angle brackets so that I can attach the board that I'm routing securely to the jig while routing. Okay, for my actual box, I measured and cut my pine board to the dimensions that I needed. Then I attached the board to the jig using those angle brackets and being careful to line up at least one side of the jig perfectly with the side of the board. Also, be sure to attach the jig to the inside of the board, that way the holes will be hidden by our joint later on. Once your jig is attached to the board, you are ready to route. To use the jig, just clamp it down on a table, and then using a ball bearing bit in your router, just run your router between the grooves. And I'll be honest, this camera angle is making me a bit dizzy. Let's try a different one. There, this is much better. Repeat the process on all boards you're joining together, and then you're ready to hammer them together. And you should get a really nice, tight, snug fit, just like this. And perfect, now you're ready for gluing. Now the beauty in this design, like I said, is that if you use shallow angle brackets, your holes will disappear inside of the joint. And if you're intentional with only screwing your jig down to the inside of your joint, then not only will the holes disappear, but they will always give you a perfect puzzle piece match as soon as you flip the board around to make your joint. If you enjoyed this quick DIY hack, or if you're interested in more gun and guitar modding or building, please consider subscribing to my channel, and stay tuned next week for when I finish building this amp enclosure. Also, in the meantime, if you didn't catch it, check out my video on how to build your dream guitar cabinet. I'm Dan, this is Guns of Guitars, and I'll see you in that next video.